No, the Jazz and Justice has just started, you know, with all of the recent things that have gone on over the last couple of years. Jazz is a great lens to look through the history of justice because it's a Black and brown art form. So, and jazz musicians have really never gotten their due. You know, I'm married to one, both of my children are jazz musicians. So my twins, who are 22 now, just turned 22. So somebody was telling me that, was it you, Elaine, that you knew me before I had twins? So.
Well, he doesn't need my introduction.
Thank you.
Happy to have her here, and I'm sure you'll be for her presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So I plan today to talk about the Jazz and Justice is just kind of blown up because it's, you can look at anything. It's Black History Month, right? You can look at anything in jazz through a lens of social justice. Duke Ellington, they just doing a special yesterday on Duke Ellington at KCSM, and Duke Ellington suffered a lot in his craft through the years. So jazz has been around a long time, and starts before Reconstruction with blues and moves forward. What I really wanted to talk about today, hi guys, I'm walking away, stepping away, was centered around next month. This month is Black History Month. Next month is Women's History Month. And so I wanted to talk today about the three women that appear in this brownstone photograph. This is a very famous photograph from 1958 for Esquire magazine. They've got all of these musicians together on a brownstone in front of, you know, in New York City at 10 in the morning, which is why there are not more jazz musicians. One of the musicians said, I didn't even know there were 2 10 o'clocks in a day. So the thing about this photograph, my son and I just went there. They got a big monument up in front of the brownstone. I don't know who lives there now, but it's in Harlem. So, and you can't take the A train to Harlem anymore. You have to take the C train. So, and we walked for quite a while to find it. But the three women in this photograph, and there are only 3. There's Maxine Sullivan, who was one of the most popular singers in the 1930s. #1 singer. Anybody ever heard of Maxine Sullivan? There you go. Case closed. Now I'm leaving. And we've got these 2 women together, Marian McPartland, who hosted piano jams for almost 40 years. And Marian Williams. How many of you have ever heard of Marian Williams? Good. Very good, because Marian Williams was one of the most extraordinary composer, arranger, educators, 30s, 40s, 50s. All 3 of these women lived pretty long lives, got to see a lot of music and a lot of changes. And Marian McPartland started a Women in Jazz Festival in the 1970s because women weren't getting jobs. The only time that women ever scored in jazz was during World War II, when all the dudes went on and left the women to play music. And so you saw the rise of a lot of women's jazz bands and swing bands in the 1940s. But then everybody came back, women went back to doing what they did. There are exceptions to the rule, and these are 3 exceptions. Let's talk first about Maxine Sullivan. Pretty diminutive Maxine. She's a really small person. She grew up in Georgia. She had a beautiful singing voice, got into radio super early on. She had a big hit with her husband, who was a bass player. In fact, all 3 of these women were married to musicians, too. So, musical family, you know, if the guy's making money, the woman can also go out and make the money too. Usually the guys are hiring you for the gig. You know, my husband doesn't hire me for gigs anymore. He used to. I love playing bass drum in the marching band, and Mardi Gras is coming up, right? And we would go do a lot of Mardi Gras parades, and he loved playing bass drum in the marching band. So he would hire me for that. He's out doing it. That's okay. That's okay. I still play. I play piano and drums, and started out on flute back in the 1960s and gave it up after 2 weeks. And I could ventilate in the past. Just could not. They don't have Suzuki flute, right? Once you don't get any winds on an instrument, you give it away. Maxine, she married John Kirby, who was a wonderful bassist, and they worked around New York for many, many years. Let me bring up a little something from Maxine so you can see her and hear her. She had a big hit. Where am I going to get my YouTube? Here. Oh, great. And there's Maxine right there. Lovely. And her big hit was Loch Lomond. You take the high road, I take the low road. There it is. Let's do the film performance so you can see her. So we want to sound. Yeah. Awesome. And then we'll play it. Sorry, I'm such a loser, Ben. Oops. That little. Oh, share sound. Okay, that's we want everybody's. All right. She was in the 1938 film Going Places with Louis Armstrong. She was an influence on people like Peggy Lee to come along later. She had a beautiful voice, a super jazz swing feel to her singing.
I wonder if this is playing through the computer.
Is it playing through the computer?
Rather than through here.
Please, no, please.
It's all right. We'll figure it out. I'll keep going. 1940, she and her husband had a radio show, and they were the first Black jazz stars to have a weekly radio show. You know, this 1940 weekly radio show, and it was in New York because it was a little more acceptable to kind of cross. 1958, she changed careers. She went back to college. She went back to school and became a nurse. She left music and became a nurse. I know, better pay. You got that right, better pay. So then after she'd been a nurse for about 10 years, John Hammond, who was a big producer, who produced everybody from like Bessie Smith to Bob Dylan, brought her out of retirement and sent her on tour. And she was in her 70s, and she was a big draw on the touring circuit. And in 1979, she was born in 1911, lived until 1987. 1979, she was nominated for a Tony Award for a show she did on Broadway called For All My Friends. So, and see, pretty much nobody remembers Maxine Sullivan. And she was wonderful.
I don't know if I can do it simultaneously in both.
That's okay. Just give them a little flair for it, a feel for it.
Sure, if I can.
You don't have to do full screen.
So if I.
Oh, she was an extremely musical family. She played flugelhorn and valve trombone in her uncle's band. So, you know, people ask, how come you guys all play music at home? Because my kids grew up playing music at home, you know, with my husband's band. My son's, you know, playing gigs with my husband when he's like 12, 13 years old. So, you know, that's how you grow up in a musical family, and you just pass it on down. So I'm happy
my kids, they probably won't make any money. And they won't be able to support me in the mode to which I've become accustomed when I get old. Because they're not going to be making any bread, but boy, they're going to be happy. They're going to be happy, you know, having music in your life all the time.
Just make something, have them learn something that'll put food on the table.
Yeah, well, that too. My daughter, Ramona, is an archivist. She's a history nut like I am. And so she'll probably get hired by some museum or some archive. She loves, you know, she's a librarian at heart. So, I'm sorry, what? Is the TV volume up?
The thing.
You got it, okay.
Yeah, good troubleshooting. You're recording the Zoom, right?
Yeah,
Can we just dump out of the, sadly? They might have to watch the Zoom later.
I can pause the Zoom, yeah. Yeah,
Would that open up the thing to play sound?
It's not far out.
The top bar?
the screen I just had open.
Hey, I'm hearing it.
Is your computer up?
Ollie?
deep, deep down of that moment, wearing purple hue, the Highland Hill.
Sorry, guys.
Out in the road.
You take the low road and we'll take the high.
For you, of me,
That was her husband singing, by the way.
you never be forget. On the bonny bank, on the bonny, bonny bank, on the bonny, bonny bank of love.
I'm gonna play a short piece. So that's in the 1930s. I'm gonna play a little bit of her when she was in her 70s and singing. Yeah, so you can get a little feel for that. Let me go back to this. Okay, I don't need that. Okay, let's go Maxine. Maxine and nope, not that one. Not that one. All right.
What's supposed to be the Scotch lady of the lake, you understand? No. What's your name?
Yeah, let me get back to you.
Well, here we Wallace let Scotch from blue sail and let. Welcome to your gory bed.
What? I'm sorry, just go there. Okay. Now what?
Oh, you're not on YouTube. Okay. Just-
Go back up here and,
and YouTube. Yeah.
okay. Okay. Do.
Thank you very much. I have a request for a number that I've been doing for quite some time. It's a song made popular by people like.
I know you guys can't see it, but I'll make it bigger.
Right now, I'd like to do 100 years from today.
It's a great song.
Hey, great. Hey, nurse.
Yeah.
Baby, that's fine. That don't you make it feel?
Yeah, funny thing though, her husband is not in the photograph. So he must have worked the night before. You know? There's only two of these musicians that are still living. Sonny Rollins and Benny Golson. Benny Golson's up here, right next to Sonny Rollins, or Sonny on the bottom. Sonny Rollins. There's Benny Golson. Sonny's got his shades on, so Sonny Rollins down here with his shades on. So the second one is, let's do Mary Lou Williams, the composer Mary Lou Williams. Mary Lou, there's a song called "There's a Gal from Kansas City Named Mary Lou." She wasn't from Kansas City, but she ended up there. She was actually from the South. I think she was from Alabama. Ended up in Kansas City. She was born 1910. So you had Maxine 1911. And Mary Lou in 1910, she lived till 1981. And Marian McPartland, 1918 to 2013, she died at 95, right? After doing that show for so long, Marian McPartland's piano jazz. So Mary Lou Williams, a pianist, composer, arranger of hundreds of compositions. She did arrangements for Duke Ellington and for Benny Goodman. This is one of her arrangements from Benny Goodman. Let me get you a picture of let's do the Benny Goodman thing. Benny Goodman, very sophisticated. They called her the girl piano genius. She was playing on radio when she was 7, 8 years old, you know, after she moved up to Pittsburgh with the family and then moved to Kansas City with her husband. She married a guy named John Williams. Her name was Alfreda Scruggs in Alabama. And then she married a guy named John Williams, not the composer, John Williams. Yeah, she wanted a better name. John had a better name. So she went by Mary Lou Williams for her entire career. And you'll notice that she's standing there with Marian McPartland, and standing very close is one of the people that she mentored, Thelonious Monk. So they used to, after she sort of retired from composing arrangement, the guys would go to her flat in New York for advice and sit, and she would make a pot of food, and they'd play all night. Bud Powell, Thelonious Monk, Duke Ellington, young Gil Evans, they're all going to her apartment to pick her brain because she had all of this great, vast knowledge of how to do voices for things and how to prepare things for shows. She was so good and quick. She was really quick at putting arrangements together, because that takes a lot of work putting an arrangement together. So.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Was she totally untrained? Was this just all instinct on her part?
You know, she went to one of the Fisk, historically black colleges. She went to Fisk for like 2 years, but mostly untrained. I think she just heard it in her head. I had a quote here about something that she did, arranged for Duke and Dizzy Gillespie, a child prodigy. Married John Williams in 1926. Here's one of the arrangements she did for Benny Goodman's band. Let's do that, because it's smoking. She wrote these great arrangements.
Hi, everyone. Mark Barden here at Sandy Hook Promise
Mark.
on December 14th.
Sorry, Mark. Yeah. It's some swinging stuff. It's Benny Goodman's band. The all white Benny Goodman band, by the way, because that's just the way it was. He did. He didn't get married. He wrote and composed it. So. He did dozens of compositions for Benny's band. Yeah, you'll see her name at the bottom, you know. Yeah, and she wrote really modern things. I want to play a little bit of an arrangement she did for Dizzy Gillespie. It's called In the Land of Obladi. So out of the swing era, this is the 30s into the 40s. After the war, this thing comes up called bebop, and it's the hot new thing in New York City that all the guys are playing, right? Bebop is just writing tunes over popular tunes of the day to make them different so you don't have to pay royalties on them, pretty much. That's what it was. Like if you take, thinking of a tune, Lady Be Good, right? Lady Be Good, da 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 to me. Lady Be Good. You can write another arrangement around the changes of that tune and make it a bebop tune and not have to pay, the Gershwin Foundation for your royalties on Lady Be Good or whatever. So here's In the Land of Obladi. Which is funny. All right, let's listen to a little of that. Yeah, this is 1940. So this is the bebop arrangement. He wrote the lyrics too.
Brother, sister, and 3 eyes, 2 eyes for me. Love the beautiful princess.
So
Body.
it's taking off on, the language of the time, that the hep cat stuff that was going on in the 40s, dude, man, how's it hanging, all the stuff that we have now, that language, but from the 1940s, which was after the war. So, and Dizzy had a whole persona, he had the goatee and the beret, and we're going into the 1950s, where the beats start to happen. So Dizzy predated the beats, but that was the fun music of the time too, from the pen of Mary Lou Williams. She ended up also having a pretty extraordinary career. She did every time the kind of the musical form of jazz would change, she would change with it. She was a very modern composer. So when after the war, when bebop was big, she was writing kind of bebop arrangements for people. And then in the 1950s, Duke Ellington was doing Carnegie Hall concerts and doing large suites. She wrote 3 suites of music. Her Zodiac suite she wrote in the 1940s, late 40s, where she profiled each zodiac sign. And it was really extraordinary writing for the time in the 40s, because it was kind of legit. It was legit composing, which jazz musicians, as hard as Duke Ellington tried, they were still saying, oh, well, it's jazz. It's jazz. But she was an absolutely legit composer. She also wrote, she converted to Catholicism in the 50s and gave up playing, started an educational institution in Harlem, which had a halfway house for poor and addicted musicians. Her friend Charlie Parker died of a heroin overdose, and so many of the guys got addicted in the 40s and 50s, and she put up a house, halfway house in Harlem for musicians to get them back on their feet. So she gave up composing and playing, but gave back to the musicians. She also wrote, after she converted to Catholicism, she wrote a fabulous piece called Black Christ of the Andes. And she went and did this research in the Andes about it. And it was a complete concept thing that would have probably gotten her a Pulitzer Prize, these days for music, because it was an extraordinary composition. So after we're done here, if you want to go, do a deep dive on some of these things Mary Lou Williams did, you'll be confounded. You'll say, really? How come we haven't heard of that? How come we didn't hear of this before? So Dizzy Gillespie convinced her to return to playing in the 60s. And she started playing with these very avant-garde musicians like Cecil Taylor, who used the piano as a percussive instrument primarily. It's only been within the last couple of years that I can even listen to Cecil Taylor, because it's like listening to 12-tone music. You really have to kind of get your ears used to hearing it, because it sounds out of key and off base, and because it's about other things. So Mary Lou opened herself up to this avant-garde community, right? And she would play with these avant-garde musicians. And part of it is just about listening to each other on the bandstand. You know, when you're playing free jazz and there's actually a form to free jazz, Mary Lou just jumped right in. You know, and she's in her 70s by this time, right? And her ears are super open to just about anything that comes along. So she taught at Duke University for about 10 years. Yeah, the concert with Cecil Taylor was 1977 at Carnegie Hall, and the critics went, "This is the worst piece of crap I've ever seen," to "This is the most extraordinary work I've ever heard." So, you know, that's what they say about jazz all the time. You know, very few people I've met on the planet say, "I love everything about jazz. I love everything. I love everything from Louis Armstrong and the blues all the way to Robert Glasper, who's writing right now. I like it all." That's like a minutia part of the people. Just about everybody says, "Oh, I know a little bit about jazz, but I really like swing music," or "I really like bebop," or, "You know, I just like the blues." You know, if you're a rock and roll head, then you like the blues, because that's what rock and roll is. It's the blues, you know, just plugged in, just plugged in for the most part. All right, let's talk about Marian McPartland, Dame Marian McPartland. She's an OBE. They made her Order of the British Empire because that's where she was born. I think they did that about 10 years before she died. Finally made her an OBE, which they should have done a long time ago. She's 1918 to 2013. The piano jazz show ran from 1978 to 2011. And I think you can still listen to some piano jazz shows. They sunset that show probably about 10 years ago. They were playing them after she passed for a while, but then I think they sunset that show. She married a musician, trumpeter Jimmy McPartland. Her maiden name, I think, was Turner, Marian Turner. And then married. Oh, she was classically trained at the Guildhall School in London, right? And she was heading out to be a classical pianist. And they told her she had three things wrong with her. It was 1951. She was white, she was English, and she was a woman. So it was hard for her to get a job, except Jimmy got her playing jobs. And he was a traditional Dixieland player, and she was a very modern pianist, but she could also play, you know, she could play Dixieland chords, you know, behind something. She doesn't have to play bebop chords on everything. She started playing at the Embers in 1951 with her own trio, and they'd have all of these guests come in to sit in. Coleman Hawkins and Louis Armstrong, and Dizzy would come in and play with her trio. So she knew how to play with just about everybody. Plus, she was a really nice person. When I interviewed Marian years ago, we did a desert island together. I went over to Yoshi's, took my tape recorder that I actually could run then, took my tape recorder, and we sat in her hotel room, and she ordered up some lunch, and we had this great conversation. And that's one of the reasons why she said, I asked her, well, why isn't Jimmy in the photograph, in the Brownstone photo? Oh, Jimmy, he's the one that said, you know, he didn't know that there were two 10 o'clocks in the day. Plus, Jimmy was a heavy drinker, so I figured he was probably hungover the day after a gig. So they ended up getting divorced, due in part because she had an affair with Joe Morello, the drummer, and Jimmy was drinking too much, and so they split. And then right before, sorry, thank you. Right before Jimmy died, they married again. They remained lifelong friends, and so they married again before he passed. Yeah, she was great. She also on the desert island, we asked them to take. You get to take a book and a luxury item you can't live without. And Marian says, "Oh, I'll take my makeup case in case some wayfaring stranger should end up on my island." So, yeah. She also cursed like a sailor. I loved it. And I think part of that is because you're in the business of being around dudes all day, right? And I have 3 brothers, and that's why I curse like a sailor, because I'm the oldest, and I've got three younger brothers, and so that's why I'm loud and, all that stuff. So, but to sort of compete with the guys, you got to be more of yourself, right? Draw upon that other part of yourself, right? Let's hear a little bit from Marian. Oh yeah, there it is. Leonard Feather said, "She'll never make it. She's English, a woman in white." Yeah. She founded her own record label, Halcyon Records. She did clinics and cruises in the 60s and 70s. She was a jazz educator. She got Jazz Educator of the Year in 1986. She mentored young women in jazz, including several here in the Bay Area. Mary Fettig, I can think of Mary's saxophone player here in the Bay Area, went and studied with Marian McPartland. So passing it on is a big part of what Marian was about. Oh, and she had a synesthesia. That's when you see colors in music and keys. She says, the key of D is daffodil yellow, is what she said. So great ear. She could play any tune in any key. That's why it was so important that she be the host of Piano Jazz, because when you have all these musicians coming in, you want to be able to accompany them in whatever key they want to play in, right? So she was perfect for that. And she really had an innate feel for each guest, a curiosity about each guest. That's what I liked so much about Marian's shows, was I learned stuff as she's starting to say something. I'm thinking, I'd like to know. And she very intuitive that way. All right, let me play a little something from Marian. There we go. Let's play something of her bebop years. Okay. And then, sorry, Dizzy. Sorry, Dizzy, we're done. You can move on, Diz. Marian McPartland. Oh, they do have these piano jazzes. I recommend the Bill Evans one, where she plays with Bill Evans, who was a wonderful pianist. And they really had a lot of simpatico together. She also became quite a nice composer. Oh, and the piano jazz she did with Steely Dan. That's really good. She's really good at that. And they tried to take her through the paces because those guys were so funny together. So this is something that she wrote. I'm going to just play this because it's so pretty.
We believe being on vacation means leaving the chores to us. Our 5-star personalized service allows you to focus on having a good time.
All the time. Oh, come on. Doesn't show her, unfortunately. I love it. He also wrote the theme to Piano Jazz, right? And this was recorded, it says, she was in her 80s, so. Yeah, she kept her facility most of her life. It's lovely. Yeah, so probably a dozen or so compositions that musicians like to cover of hers. But I really love the piano jazz program. Let's find something that has her playing. So I can show you later in her life. Marian McPartland. Yeah, questions anytime, guys. Yeah.
She composed but didn't play, or she?
Oh, no, she composed and
That was
played.
her-
Yeah, that was her playing. Yeah. Let me see. I want something with her. Oh, here's. Oh, yeah, this is 1978 or maybe right. Her dress looks like 70s. We usually try to tell by the Monterey gases. And she was mentoring young students and heard her with she did certain stuff. Yeah, I'm kind of on a mission. I mean, I grew up with this music and I'm just I'm right. No. My father's name is Beer. Dan. Yeah, I have. Oh, did he? Did what? Did he like what I did? My dad and father, the engineer? No. Not at all, because he does. Engineer. You should tell him. Like, no, mom would put radio and jazz. I make no money. So since I retired. Dress, Marian, that's a nice outfit. I like that. Since I retired, the San Mateo County Community College District that didn't pay a whole lot of money. I mean, I made a teacher's salary my whole life. And when I retired, my pension was not going to be enough to like cover our mortgage. Well, my husband's a musician, so he wasn't gigging during the pandemic, right? Nothing was happening. So I got a job up at KCBS. I'm an anchor at KCBS radio. And you know what? For the first time in my entire life, I'm making enough to cover my mortgage. Because to work at KCBS, you have to join the SAG-AFTRA union, right? And they pay better. I'm kind of. What do you do? I do the news. I do the bad news every day.
And you have to listen to this.
Morning person to overnight. I know I'm doing a lot of overnights, which means I'm on the air from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. And I used to get up at 4, and go to work. But you know what? I'm part-time, so I only do it 2 or 3 times a week, which is okay. Then I crash for 2 days. But it's interesting because somebody says, well, how do you go from jazz public radio to doing the news? I said, they're both storytelling. It's all storytelling, right? I'm telling the stories of these 3 women here. And when I go up to KCBS tonight, I'll
tell the terrible stories of earthquakes and shootings, and my husband's like, as long as you don't bring this stuff home, bring this anger home, and I'm like, no, we're good on it. So I leave it at the door up there, so, and then go out and do.
Do you actually go to the studio or do you?
We do. They have some of our traffic people are still doing remote. We have editors and writers, that some of them are remote, but when I go up there, it's funny because there's nothing happening down on Battery Street. Everything's empty down there, right? The people haven't come back. So when I go up there to do the news tonight, which I will, and I get to write the news too. They send us copy. They'll send us like AP copy or Chronicle copy, and then we rewrite for radio, which is for my spoken word, for my voice. So I like that. I get to rewrite the news to not make it so hard. It's easier. It's too hard. No, it's too hard. And I think they hired me because they were desperate. And I did in radio for 30 years, and like, oh, okay, we'll get her, we can train her, or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. I have to tell you, I listen to you every morning for I don't know how many years, and then you and one time they turned on the radio and I thought, wait a minute.
Wait.
No, that's
There you go. On our pension, on our college pension, CSEA pension.
as a retiree.
Yeah, oh, I know, the benefits are great, they've been really great this year, so. I think that's all I got, what do you guys?
You speak about the racism implicit in being black and brown, and whether it was reflected in the music, and whether it was music specifically about it.
Oh, I think when it comes down to, okay, here's an example. So there were black and white musicians unions. Here in San Francisco, we were late getting into that game. Our black and white musicians unions did not combine until the 60s. Can you believe that? So, and in the studios, prior to 1960s, black and white musicians played often on each other's records because you couldn't tell color in the studio. But on live gigs, it was pretty separated for a long time. And women, forget it, right? You've got so many men vying for these not very many slots in a jazz band, right? Plus, the wives are going to get upset if the guys put a woman on the gig, and there's so much. So it's very complicated, the black-white issue, black and brown issue. And I spend generally a whole semester on all of them. Because it's like race in America is very complicated. It's very complicated and then it's not. Right? So trying to make it better, one person at a time. So try to do that. Women are now, there are a lot of bands led by women, and the women hire Ingrid Jensen, I'm thinking of, trumpet player, and Maria Schneider, who's a band leader in New York, orchestra leader. Maria hires the best musician, regardless of black, white, male, female, transgender. So it's much better than when I was coming up in band. I was in band. I played drums in the marching band. I was the only girl, the young girl in the marching band. And that's 1976, 77, 78 in high school. And when I got into an elevator at some band competition, the guys in the elevator said, "So what do you play? Bells?" Because marching bells were okay. For and flute, piccolo, you know. Occasionally you'd see a woman playing saxophone. Occasionally trombone was acceptable actually, which is weird. Trumpet was not, because that's like a dude's instrument. You know, stringed instruments are good for women, for girls. It's all different. It's all different. You talk to any of these women trumpet players, and they're badasses. These young women, they are so bad. You know, they're really great. I've interviewed a lot of them, and you know, it's like, well, who got you your first tour? My dad did. You know, who did you mentor with? Well, I mentored with men and women, both sides of the fence, you know, everything. So it's much better now than it was in the 60s or 70s. And it was really, really bad for these three. Right? I think it was, but you know, Marian said she wouldn't have traded it for anything. You know, I do the same. I mean, she had to travel the world, she had to play music. You know, anytime you get to play music, you know, it's a great day. And we get to share that. In the area of danger stuff. Some have died and some have been reborn. It's the same with all businesses. I think. We have energy. I know. Yeah, I've been there. Yeah. There's a new one up in the city. Tees Jazz Bistro. I haven't been there yet, but yeah, there's some coming up. But it's tough. Yeah. But, you know,
Well, I just was gonna ask you to kind of name some of the jazz places that are still going. That are maybe relevant. You know,
relatively expensive. Yoshi's. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys have been up to the SF Jazz Center, but it's quite nice. It's very expensive. It's not. It's crappy because they don't make it accessible to everybody. It's like classical music.
Well,
Why do
actually,
you have it?
they do, for $5 a month. You can
Oh, they do that. Oh, okay.
We listen every Friday. It's
Oh,
great.
excellent. Oh, so you do the.
Yeah, it's for $5 a month. You can get just a Zoom membership every Friday. There's a concert, typically live, 7 or 7:30. We enjoy it, and then they have special promotions and playlists and things like
Yeah.
that. So for $5 a month, it's a great deal, and we love it because it is expensive. We've been exposed to a lot of music we would never have seen.
Yeah,
or
that's a great.
heard.
That's a great. I have no idea they were doing that. That's great. That's great.
you know, I'll have Kathy put the link in the.
To the SF Jazz thing, yeah, that'd be great.
Sounds fabulous, thank you.
Yeah, they started during COVID, which was brilliant, because they have
Mhm.
15,000 members. Because
Oh, yeah.
they all closed, but listen to it at what they look for, so they keep it going.
Yeah, and a lot of musicians, and my kids and my son, my husband included, ended up doing video concerts. And then putting up a PayPal or something so that they can make some, keep going through the
They have
pandemic.
this little jar. if you want to
Yeah.
share it. So.
Tip jar, virtual tip jar, which is nice. Yeah.
Is it live watching or is it live?
It's typically live. And there are two venues within that site. There's a larger minor. Project, which is this more intimate venue.
Their lab.
So lab, thank you. And so it's typically one of those, if the performer doesn't want that to be broadcast live, they'll do a recording session, but they'll tell you in
So is
advance.
it a hybrid thing where there's people in actually in the facility?
Oh, it's live. There are people in there.
Like we did here. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm so sorry.
Hear the crowd and it's
Yeah.
nice because you can hear the reaction. It's nice to hear the reaction.
Yeah. And you're right about being exposed to people you would never see. I mean, there's so many young musicians out there that are just incredible, doing really great work. So, yeah,
Is Pascal O'Connor still around?
he is. Pascal is still around. Yeah, I don't think he's running his club anymore.
No.
Yeah, that-
He's run out of there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people kind of had a tough time during the pandemic. Yeah.
What about the Boston gospel figures? I think we can get that.
Yeah, I would say, and people ask me things about, like Frank Sinatra. Is Frank Sinatra considered a jazz singer? I would say that Mahalia Jackson only sang sacred music, she said, except that sacred music, a lot of gospel music is blues based.
Yeah.
Right? It's just, and I always like to say it's the difference between saying, oh Jesus and oh baby. It's the same. It's the same form. Blues and gospel music are the same form. It's so everybody can sing it, right? In church, it's not Catholic music. It's not kumbaya. I grew up Catholic. Our music was bad until the late 60s, when they started having folk masses. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I can go to church now. The music's better. Music's better at church. Yeah.
You been to see the Satchel show down San Mateo?
I did see the Satchel show the last time. It was,
Last Sunday, I posted.
it is, yeah, it's,
Satchel at the
Waldorf, yeah, it's,
I think it's in 61 or
Mhm.
60, he died very soon.
yeah, I saw it with the guy up in San Francisco like years ago when it was here. So it's in San Jose now?
In San Jose right now, it's a small theater.
Satchel and Waldorf.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah.
Is it there for an extended run?
Sorry?
Is it there for an extended period?
I don't know how long.
It is a great show.
It's
a great show.
a very powerful, it's a one-man show. It plays 3 characters. The guys are really great.
Yeah. All right, you guys. Thank you. Is that it? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Carl. Sorry for the trouble.
Great, thank you so much. It's really great to see so many people here. I think we'll be doing more along the lines of jazz. We left with you survey, if you will. We would like to be sure that we're really, attuned to all of the coffee connection topics and things that you would like. So if you take just a minute or two to let us know that'd be more important. By the way, I talk to everybody. I'm Sue Elvis, I'm the executive director of the Village. If I haven't met you, most of you I have. So thanks for joining us today, and thank you again, Alicia.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. It's so great to see some of you I have not seen in 1,000 years. Really. It's just great to commune. Yeah. I am.
Today, the National Charity League, Mothers and Daughters. Thank you.
We worked it out.
That's an ideal, but.
Yeah, but you